1967년부터 지금까지 약 50여 년 동안 이스라엘을 위해서 그리고 이스라엘의 예수를 믿는 메시아닉주들을 위해서 기도를 아주 오랫동안 해온 그런 사역 단체가 있습니다. 바로 Pray for Israel이라고 하는 단체인데요. 이 단체가 50여 년 동안 이스라엘을 위해서 기도하고 또 그 메시아닉주들을 위한 기도 제목들을 많은 사람들에게 알리는 이런 일들을 해오다 보니 얼마나 그동안 많은 일들이 있었겠습니까? 우리 한국에서도 이스라엘 위해서 기도하고 또 메시아닉주들을 위해서 기도하는 분들에게는 이 Pray for Israel 사역단체의 이야기들을 들어본다면 우리에게도 이스라엘 선교, 유대인 선교 그리고 또 이스라엘을 위해서 기도하는데 많은 도움이 되지 않을까 이런 생각을 하게 돼서 제가 영국에 있는 Pray for Israel이라는 사역단체를 찾아왔고요. 대표이신 데렉 라우스 목사님을 찾아와서 그분에게 좀 이야기를 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 목사님 이렇게 귀한 시간 내주셔서 고맙습니다. Thank you.
Brad, welcome to Prayer for Israel headquarters.
제가 조금 전에 소개할 때 1967년도에 이 Pray for Israel 단체가 이제 새로 시작이 됐다 이렇게 설명을 해드렸는데 특별히 1967년도에 이 Pray for Israel이라는 단체가 영국에서 생길 만한 특별한 이유가 있었습니까?
Prayer for Israel organization really developed after the Six-Day War in 1967. The man who started it, Ken Burnett, who was a Jewish believer, had come to faith in Jesus, in Yeshua, some years before. But during the 1960s, he and along with others were really stirred up to get Christians to pray for the redemption of Israel because it was beginning. It was only two or three congregations in 1967. But they prayed, and today we had a report from Israel last week when we were there. Something around 300 congregations have grown since that time.
그럼 지금 이스라엘에 있는 메시아닉주 공동체하고 이 Pray for Israel 단체하고는 한 300여 개 되는데 지속적인 어떤 그 교류가 있습니까?
Well, for 50 years, people have been walking the land and praying and meeting people and seeing Jewish people come to faith and forming a friendship with them. For 50 years, they've been going in prayer tours and praying around the country and seeing new congregations come to life in the towns and villages, not just Jerusalem or Tiberias or Tel Aviv, but across the land, and forming a relationship with them and a friendship so that they know we pray for them, pray for what they want to see take place in the land, which is the salvation of Israel. So it's increased by association, by meeting with people. We can't get to Israel that many times, but we invite them to this country, pastors, leaders, ministry leaders, to share with other prayer partners. And it's a work of God. It's certainly not down to our organization, because we're a small organization, merely a connecting point between the believers there and believers here and around the world who pray. And they trust us. And it's first of all prayer, out of which comes support. It's not a huge amount by any means, but it's enough. As they trust God and live by faith and trust God for their lives, they know we will pray in crises situations.
그렇게 해서 이제 이스라엘에 있는 메시아닉주 공동체와 또 Pray for Israel 단체하고 계속 교류를 하면서 그들의 지금 필요한 기도 제목을 받아서 이런 매거진을 발행한다고 얘기를 들었습니다. 영국 사람들에게만 보내는 겁니까? 아니면 다른 나라에도 보내는 건가요?
We send the prayer bulletin to people who want to pray, essentially, wherever they are. And we're getting more and more contacts from people around the world. We send them by paper currently to 60 countries of the world. Only a few in some countries, a lot more in others. The UK has been uniquely, I think, used by God over maybe 200 years to foster prayer for Israel. God has used this country remarkably, I think, in mission since the late 1700s to send the gospel to all kinds of places. And in the 1800s, God stirred believers, Christians in this country, to send missionaries and people with the gospel to Jewish communities around the world. And the great thing now is that we can connect with a believing church in Israel made up of mainly Jewish believers, but a lot of Arab Christians who are also reconciled to God first. Then they can be reconciled with their neighbors, the Jewish believers as well. So God's doing a miraculous thing in the land of Israel. It has to be seen to be believed, really. But so we'll send it to anybody on the request that they keep it to themselves. They can talk to other people about it, but we do not want to expose Jewish believers in the land of Israel to any more danger than they're already in.
플레이포 이스라엘 단체에서 이 이스라엘의 메시아닉 유대인들을 위한 기도 제목을 이렇게 매거진으로 발행을 해서 전 세계 60개 나라에 보낸 다음에 이것을 받아본 사람들의 반응은 좀 어떻던가요?
I think they're very encouraged to know that God is at work, and it's not all bad news that we hear. God is at work in Israel, remarkably, against all the pressures that they face there, from internal Orthodox pressures, the Orthodox Jews who know that the Christian church has been against them for 2,000 years, blaming them for the death of Yeshua. And yet we all put him on the cross. He died in my place. That was Spurgeon's sort of keynote of his sermon preaching. Jesus died for me. I killed him just as much as any Jewish or Roman soldier who put him on the cross. So the Jews are not to blame any more than anybody else for the death of Jesus, but they have been blamed, and culminating really in the awful atrocities of the Second World War and the Holocaust. And even today, being accused of all sorts of war crimes for merely defending themselves against an agenda that seeks their destruction. There's no question about it that Islam hates Israel. Islam hates Christians. So it wants to see Israel wiped off the map. It's made it public. So they're under no illusions there that they're in a battle for survival. But God's involved, and he's brought it all about and bring it to a head in our times. Our magazine is meant to be an encouragement. We have a ministry of encouraging, because many Christians in this country and around the world are up against all kinds of pressures, and we want to encourage them. We don't want to burden them with extra things. So I try and write a short editorial at the front to encourage saints to carry on, to persist, don't lose heart. You know, it's a tough world, but you know what? It's going to get better. It's going to get worse, but it's going to get better in the end.
전 세계 60여 개 나라에 있는 크리스찬들 중에 이스라엘을 위해서 기도하는 분들은 플레이포 이스라엘 단체에서 보내온 이 매거진을 보고 이스라엘 위해서 열심히 기도를 하시겠지만, 제가 궁금한 것은 영국에 있는 교회와 영국에 있는 목사님들, 영국에 있는 성도들은 이렇게 이스라엘을 위해서 기도하자라고 했을 때 반응이 적극 지지하는 편입니까? 아니면 무관심한 편입니까?
Well, let me give you an example. I had an email back from somebody today who is in a church who believes everything that we teach and believes all that God's doing in Israel is true, but he daren't touch it because he knows he's going to get into trouble. It's a political hot potato, and pastors of churches want a quiet life. There are a few who are brave, but we're being challenged in this country over every issue of faith. Israel, the understanding of Israel, is a symptom of a problem that exists right through every denomination. It's not one church or another. Whether the Bible is true, whether God's promises are forever, and whether Jesus is the only way, truth, and life. And there's some very fundamental issues about creation, about life, about redemption, about the coming kingdom that pastors, leaders don't want to touch because they want to. It's difficult. So when you try and get into churches to talk about Israel, we are trying to get in through the prayer partners who attend, but by and large, the true and living church is out in the wilderness, I think, now, in our country, this country. And it's happened really over the last 20, 30 years. I've been a Christian for 50 years. I've seen the decline of faith in this country, even in the charismatic renewal, been through that. And we're living in some pretty challenging days for every matter of faith and practice. About gender realignment, about homosexuality. So Israel is up there as well. People don't understand. And pastors don't want to touch it because they'll get into too much trouble. What we're doing to deal with that is to take leaders, to invite leaders to come to Israel and see what God is doing. That's where I was last week, in Israel, taking Christian leaders around and showing what God is doing in the land.
그럼에도 불구하고 우리가 이스라엘을 위해서 기도해야 하는 이유, 또 단체 이름이 Pray for Israel, 이스라엘을 위해서 기도하자 이름이 이런데 우리가 이스라엘을 위해서 기도해야 하는 이유 뭘까요?
Why do we pray for Israel? Because God is not finished with Israel. So we're praying in accordance with His plans and purposes for this time. And I think, as I said before, there's a blessing in doing things God's way and praying in accordance with His will for Israel and for the nations, and praying for our nation too. I think we still have a responsibility to be a prophetic voice, a true prophetic voice, not like the prophets who spoke to the kings and the nations about God's plans and purposes for every individual. God is not finished. Romans chapter 11, Paul made it very clear. God is not finished with Israel. So he said that after, while Israel was going to face the destruction of the temple, God scattered His people. But Paul and others preached that God's purposes would be fulfilled. The prophecies would be fulfilled. They would be restored back to the land. And if we think that Israel is finished, well, Jeremiah said very clearly in Jeremiah 31 about God, just as the moon and the stars exist in the sky, so Israel will still be a part of in God's heart. The reason we should pray and keep praying for Israel is because God has not redeemed all His people yet. So we need to pray that just as God wanted to raise up intercessors in the Old Testament, Moses interceded for Israel in the Old Testament when God said, I'm going to destroy them and I'm going to start again with you, Moses. But Moses reminded God of His promises and His ability to redeem His people. It's God's honor that's at stake here. If God couldn't save Israel and bring them back to the land and redeem them, why should He be able to do that for me, in this country? If God is not faithful to Israel, He'll not be faithful to Korea or to England or anybody for that matter. So we're appealing to God on behalf of that which He has already revealed to us, that His plan is the redemption of His people, Israel, and people. God loves the world. He wants the world to know Him.
1967년부터 50여 년 동안 이스라엘을 위해서 이렇게 사역단체를 운영해 오셨다고 했는데 어떻습니까? 최근 들어서 이 플레이 포 이스라엘 단체 운영하는데 굳이 어려움이 있다면 어떤 어려움이 있습니까?
There's not enough time in the day. That's a difficulty. Not enough prayer partners. Well, we think. God works with the minority. He's not often in the majority. So if we had 7,000, I think that's a good biblical number to have, prayer partners, who had not bowed the knee to Baal. I hope that's true for Prayer for Israel, but we'd love to see more prayer partners. The greatest difficulty is trying to tell people what's going on there, trying to pass on the life that's going on in Israel to encourage us in this country and other countries too, because so many are facing all kinds of problems. Syrian Christians, Iraqi Christians, Iranian believers, Christians, are facing a torrid time today. So we're trying to encourage people to be encouragers and to stand up and be a prophetic voice where they have been placed. We have X amount of prayer partners in this country and around the world. Our prayer is that God will give courage to people to stand for Him wherever they are, whoever they are, whatever they think of themselves. They're not mighty, great, noble, as Paul said to the Corinthians, but they're God's people and they can make a difference where they are.
한국에는 최근 들어서 이스라엘 위해서 기도하는 그런 분들이 많이 또 생겨나고 있고요. 우리 브레드 TV가 또 그런 일들을 많이 사람들에게 알리고 있는데 50년 동안 이스라엘 위해서 기도를 해 오셨던 사역 단체의 대표로서 이스라엘 위해서 기도할 때 이렇게 기도하는 것이 훨씬 더 이스라엘 위한 기도입니다. 조언이나 충고를 해주신다면 어떤 내용을 말씀하시겠습니까?
Where it says to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. What does that mean? Jerusalem is a very turbulent city. There's a lot of pressures there, but what does it really mean? It's praying for God's shalom, His well-being to come upon that city, the people. And that can only come when the Prince of Peace is there in the center. He can be there now, but He's coming back to rule and reign, we know for sure, in the coming days. But before that, we can have the peace that passes all understanding, which is having a living relationship with God, and praying that for the congregations. That's the biggest thing that they need, is to have boldness and courage to go out, and despite the threats of the Orthodox, despite the threats of Iran to wipe them off the face of the map, that they will boldly stand for Jesus, for righteousness, for truth and justice in Israel. Israel needs not just the Lord, it needs the righteousness and justice of God. There's corruption. There is there's prostitution on the streets. There's alcoholism, drug addiction. The young kids are going into all kinds of fanciful experiences. So Israel needs the same kind of things that Korea needs, actually. We're in a spiritual battle, and we need to pray in accordance with God's Spirit, not wild and weird things, but the realities of righteousness and peace and truth that will be the backbone of Korea and for Israel too.
알겠습니다. 만약에 한국의 이 브레드 TV 시청자들이 나도 영국에서 발행된 플레이 포 이스라엘 이 기도 편지를 좀 받아보고 싶다. 그러면은 이 플레이 포 이스라엘 영국 사무실로 이메일을 보내거나 연락을 하면은 한국으로도 보내주시는 겁니까?
Absolutely. Yes, we're just actually activating our website, which has a general area explaining and making available leaflets to explain, like this one, 7 Reasons Why You Should Pray for Israel. That's one of many short leaflets which we produce to get people a little bit interested. We produce booklets which explain things a little bit more deeply. And then there's a secure area where you can log on as a prayer partner. We ask you to sign up first with your email address, and we give you a password. You get in to then download. You can download the bulletins off the website, the magazines, all the leaflets and booklets. You can buy books. You can buy DVDs, tapes, and you can support all the ministries that we support, but we can send it by post. This is free to anybody who asks. We stand the cost of that. That's the cost of the ministry.
알겠습니다. 지금 플레이 포 이스라엘 영국에서 발행하는 이 기도 편지가 지금 전 세계 60여 개의 나라로 발송되고 있다고 하는데, 이제 앞으로 그 60여 개 나라에서 또 한국에 더 포함됐으면 좋겠고요. 영국의 크리스찬들과 또 60여 개 나라의 크리스찬들이 우리 한국의 크리스찬들과 함께 동일한 기도 제목을 갖고 이스라엘 위해서 기도하는 그런 날이 오기를 저희가 또 바라겠습니다. 그리고 또 나중에 가능하면 영어로 된 이 기도 편지를 우리 한국어로 번역해서 또 한국 분들에게 우리 TV에서 소개하는 그런 일도 앞으로 좀 해나갔으면 좋겠습니다. 어쨌든 오늘 이렇게 귀한 시간 내주시고 저희에게 이스라엘을 위해서 왜 기도해야 되는지, 어떻게 기도해야 되는지 귀한 말씀 나눠주셔서 고맙습니다. Okay, thank you so much.